My name is Lou Paradise. I'm a product formulator developer at Topical Biomedics, a researcher, have had many opportunities to deal with issues with regard to pain, and I'm delighted to have this moment to be here to tell my story.
So you have a story. Are you in pain?
Not anymore, but some 30-something years ago, I was suffering from a neurological, nerve-related issue that had actually come about as a result of hyperextension injuries that I sustained by being a helicopter crew chief in the Marine Corps and 2 rotations in Vietnam. So my injuries were really sustained in that duty, which is pretty physically intense kind of duty. Helicopter combat crews are generally, their life expectancy is pretty short actually, 7 minutes. So as resident maniac, all of our people in our squadron decided we were going to stay 2 rotations. We put a lot more physical demands on us. You're going into the ocean to get a pilot or 2 out of a cockpit that couldn't eject, maybe unconscious. We wind up with a crowbar trying to get the canopy to slide back to get these folks out of there. You're going sometimes under the water. And so you're never, you don't have any fancy equipment to help you extract these incredible people.
Just your body.
Just your body, and you're physically overusing your limbs every moment you're there. Overrun positions, combat, in and out of combat duty, for strategic positionings for our troops, wherever our troops were. And probably most sensitive issues, in addition to our wounded and rescuing people out of the jaws of death sometimes, where there was an overrun position and we got our people out in any event, was our rescue of Vietnamese and sometimes Cambodian civilians, which were just heart-wrenching. And a lot of them were young and or old. So we had little babies to older folks. The ones in between were usually in one army or the other.
And you were young at the time, right?
Yeah, I was just 18 years old, and I stood till I was nearly 20. So my time in looking at what I think was one of the things that sustained me through a pain syndrome that really made me more angry. I was more angry about being in pain than the woe is me, because I'm a problem solver, and I wasn't going to have this kind of a problem that turned my life completely upside down. These nerve-related pain is different than muscle pain because it doesn't let you sleep. It keeps you from focusing on what you're doing, and when not getting enough sleep, of course, you're always looking at what is the issue with regard to your pain kind of keeping you as a prisoner. It was unrelenting for me. It felt like I was intentionally sticking my fingers in an electrical socket. And then as an Italian boy, I may do some crazy stuff, but that wasn't one of them. And
Every day?
Every day, all day long. Couldn't sleep at night. I slept up in a chair, keeping my hands lower, thinking, okay, I've got to get this circulation or something back to normal. And fortunately for me, I have some knowledge in natural things. And
where did that come from?
That came actually as just a grand story. When I was a little boy, Italian families coming over from Italy have these incredible medicine that they get from natural compounds and herbs. They use everything from bay leaves to simple other compounds, and a lot of the women were the ones who administered to the local people. So I had this fascination with seeing them actually, help somebody with bronchitis, or I didn't realize it was bronchitis at the time, respiratory ailments, wounds, all kinds of injuries. It's not that they didn't go to the doctor, but if they could get it first from the local medicine person, they were like, wow, it's better.
Wow.
So very few pharmaceuticals, yeah.
Yeah.
It was fascinating for me, and it opened up a whole thought process about, wow, the body's pretty amazing, and if you don't have to necessarily go to your doctor, even though this is a good thing to do when you do have some unresolved issues, and of course you should have a good medical person on your side at all times. But this led me to understand that there was some natural forces at hand, that pain was telling me something.
You were a problem solver, you said. So
yeah.
You were dealing with pain and you decided to problem solve it.
Exactly. So of course I started, not a big fan of pharmaceuticals. I don't take any drugs now, any pharmaceutical prescription or over-the-counter drugs at all. But I thought about, the body's a magnificent thing. I mean, pain is some sort of a device that's telling us something. It's saying, hey, wait a minute. I know exactly how I got injured, and this injury for me was not. I wasn't the only one who was suffering. Even though I knew a lot of people who suffer from pain as a young person, seeing my older aunts, uncles, grandmothers. I even knew my great grandmothers, which is just incredible. And so this now became a focus for me. I kind of stood inside, which most people in my neighborhood thought was, well, what happened, man? Where are you?
Yeah.
And I started to experiment with different things to see if I could ease the pain. It started
this is
me
after your service?
Yes, and it started me on a quest, a real journey.
You left, how old were you?
Just 21.
And you were leaving in pain.
I had starting of some residual pain. I didn't know where it was coming from, and it was really almost 8 or 10 months later that it was full blown. Again, like I was sticking my fingers in an electrical socket and getting these jolting pains and throbbing pains from the tip of my fingers all the way to my elbows. And so the whole idea of understanding where my injuries came from was probably the key thing. Is I didn't realize that at the time. I have some physiology training, so I realized that I had been suffering from what is called hyperextension injuries. And what that really means is if you're pulling on things, that whole typical thing of going into the water and getting into a cockpit. Sometimes the pilots in the woods crashed and they're unconscious in the cockpit, and you're yanking them out and they're unconscious. The person who's unconscious is very heavy compared to somebody who's helping you to get extracted. So what happens is you get these hyperextension stretching injuries in your connective tissue, and in my case didn't realize that the median nerves in my hands, the ulnar nerves in my elbows, and of course if you crash the helicopter a couple of times in the woods and you're trying to extract everybody and get out of there, you'll put some compression in your neck. So I had what is called bilateral issues, which means that it was in both hands, not just one. So the injuries occurred as a result of rescuing people.
And that's what you did.
Yeah, medevac, combat issues, all sorts of things where you're lifting things way too. You're not in position to do it. You're just doing things and lifting, and you're getting injured.
And reacting. And so you came with these injuries, and you did your research to decide how to treat yourself. Did you go to a doctor? What were your options?
I did. I think the smartest thing always is to go to your medical doctor, get the diagnostic part of it done so you know what you're dealing with. There wasn't real MRI back in those times, There was just barely CAT scans. So I knew it wasn't joint related in essence of bones that were broken or any of that kind of stuff. But I suspected that the stretching of the nerves, and one of the doctors was a neurologist, and he said, you may have injured the nerves in your hands, and it was typical of what a person with what a severe case of carpal tunnel might feel, numbing feeling, pain, throbbing pain, burning pain, crazy kind of stuff that you definitely don't want. And so I started to look at, the normal thing for me would be to ice, started with ice or hot moist heat treatments to see where what was it, more inflammation? Was it I need to get better circulation?
What did your doctor say to do?
Oh, they immediately said, well, we can give you some narcotic pain medicine to take. And I said, no thank you.
Why?
I knew that, the issue with regard to what the body is a miracle, really. These many years later, I know it more than I could even express. And I knew that the pain, there was something happening within the pain that was telling me what I actually needed to do to find a cure, to find a way to help my body to heal. My research and all my physiology that I was self-taught physiology was about how the body actually heals itself. So anything that wasn't, and especially remember, I'm a person who really believed in natural medicine. And so if I was going to help, going back to my grandmother and my great-grandmother and all these beautiful ladies that I love dearly, how would they approach this? They wouldn't be taking oral pain medicine for it. They'd be figuring out what they needed to do to help the body to heal itself, basically. And that's kind of what I got from them so many years ago.
So that was still in your head.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
very much prevalent as my main course of action, that only and maybe the last resort that I would submit to a pharmaceutical of any kind. Surgery was also one of the doctors indicated surgery, and I said, no, thank you. Just my instinct told me this is not the way to approach this. This isn't something, I'm a young man, I'm only 21 for goodness sake, so I'm not, I figure I'll start getting surgery when I'm 107 to make me look like I'm 37. I don't know why I would think that 37 would be, I die the next day, but it'd be cool. But not now. No, elective stuff is one thing. If if it was a broken bone, or they could demonstrate that I had torn ligaments and tendons that needed to be surgically repaired, that might have been a different story. And that certainly could still happen to somebody very young.
Yeah.
But I said, no, my instinct was telling me, no, that's not the answer either.
So you went on your own path.
Went on my own path.
To solve your pain.
Absolutely.
And how did that begin?
Started to typically look at, not even at that time, back in those days, arnica, which most people understand in the herbal sense of arnica, wasn't really as well known as it is today. But I remember arnica and bay leaves and other things that my great-grandmother used. And that immediately told me, well, that's what I'm doing first. Mm-hmm. And it gave me some relief. I had discovered in my transition between Vietnam and coming home, homeopathy. And I started to look there. I'm saying, I'm not really sure I understand this very much at the time. But these subtle medicines and the body's chemistry is being subtle, more so than these big chemical reactors that the body can produce incredible things to keep healing, to keep blood flow normalized, different things that it does to keep the body and cells healthy, probably had some clues for me. I started to experiment with taking some oral homeopathic tinctures at the time. It seemed to help to a degree, but I couldn't measure it really. And so I shifted my focus to thinking, well, all the stuff that these incredible people that I learned from did topically, more so than orally, may be a better answer. And so icing helped to a degree, moist heat. I even did, at the time before it was popular, I remember how putting paraben, getting, I should say paraffin, wax and immersing seemed to help.
You were in that much pain.
I was in that much pain. And then at times it made it worse. So I'm thinking, okay, it's a combination of circulation needing to be normalized and inflammation being still screaming. Mm-hmm. And I took a couple of different approaches and really began an incredible journey of discovery from that point. During the first time of experimenting in this way, by about the second month or third month, I was able to sleep for the first time laying down in bed for like 3 hours.
Wow.
For me, it was like being on a catamaran in the Caribbean with all my best buddies and all the relatives I love, having a lobster lunch and drinking some champagne. I mean, I'm celebrating. It's like most people don't know that just a little incremental something that changed to give you some hope that you're not lost, that you're not, this is not going to be permanent. And then maybe I've got to resort to some surgery or some opiates or whatever it was that they were going to prescribe for me. And it really just lit me up and made me say, okay, problem solver, now you have your course. You didn't think anything good can come from this kind of pain, but I think you're supposed to be doing something, you have to learn something, and maybe your discovery will not only help yourself, hopefully, but other people as well. So
you found your path, that you were on the right path.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so from that point on, so you were finally sleeping.
Mm-hmm. And of course, being an Italian boy and being slow, I understand when when you don't get enough sleep, you're not supposed to be able to concentrate either.
Mm-hmm.
But this other thing gave me this, I don't know if it was endorphins that were just rushing through me, but I was so hyped on the idea that I could actually find a way to fix what this thing was, since doctors couldn't help me. And the advisory, the prescribed ways of doing this was definitely not going to be the answer. And then I started to really, really experiment. Homeopathy became my best friend at that time. Homeopathy is actually the only regulated natural medicine that exists in the United States. Traditionally, it comes from herbal, animal, and mineral compounds. Dr. Samuel Hahnemann was the one who initiated inventing this 200 years ago. He actually was looking at people with malaria, and when he started to experiment, he got the bark of the cicona tree, and where we know natural quinine comes from, actually. And when he drank the full version, the full-blown, rendered tea from the tree, if you will, he got exactly the same symptoms of malaria. Exactly, chills, fever, nausea, all sorts of things. He started to experiment with chemically reducing initially, thinking, okay, wait a minute, this subtle, maybe just doing lesser, kind of diluting this a little bit would now produce another result. Mm-hmm. And he got nowhere initially until he started to what is called succuss, which means that you have a certain portions of and I'll give you the typical example of what is looked at. And something that is an X dilution is actually a derived medicine, a homeopathic medicine that comes from 9 parts of water to 1 part of the actual natural component. Okay. Then it's shaken, which is where the key is. It energizes the medicines, and it's done a series of times till you come out with whatever X dilution. So you'll find typically homeopathic products that may be 3X or 4X or 5X, 6X. He found that when you succussed, when you actually energized the medicines between the dilutions, a whole different circumstance had come to his knowledge base. When he administered this homeopathic now solution to people with malaria, they started to get better. Yeah. So instead of dealing with the symptom, neutralizing the symptom by chemical means, the symptom is the key, how to help the body. The symptom's telling us how the body is reacting to something that it has now been infected with. Malaria is very serious still today.
So you found natural substances were starting to work for you, starting to help your body learn how to heal itself.
This whole idea that if the body could be stimulated, and looking at what pain represented was the signaling device that it's telling us, hey, there's something that's broken, I'm trying to fix it, and I need a couple things that can help me to bring about the relief you're looking for. I think what takes place is most people probably need to understand that healing is the ultimate form of relieving pain. And if you're still in pain, there's something still wrong and you're not coming to that point. So the body's ability to heal is an absolute miracle. So what I really found fascinating was I studied hormonal compounds and metabolites. And when you take a look at the normal blood, drawn blood, and the normal rates of, or what is found within the blood system for estrogen, testosterone, progesterone for that matter, metabolites, in picograms, the picogram size was almost identical to the X dilution in homeopathic medicine. So it gave me the first clue to understand that, wow, these subtle chemistries or the body's natural cellular molecular structure is almost identical to this homeopathic formulary. That means that we're finding a better match between subtle chemistries for subtle chemistry, reacting and responding and helping to balance, causing what is called a homeostatic balance, as opposed to 350 milligrams of ibuprofen or 600 milligrams of acetaminophen or naproxen, which overwhelm the body and may desensitize your feeling of pain, but doesn't really help what the body's asking for, which is we want to fix the pain. We want the body to heal and repair that damage.
So could you find what you wanted to find at a store, or did you go on your own path and find your own ingredients?
I had the good fortune of doing both. There was an older man in his 80s actually in Sweden who one of my friends knew. And he had done incredible work with homeopathic medicine. So there were things at the store, but they were all tinctures and or tablets or pellets. And I wanted to get something closer. I needed to do it myself. I needed to find a lab or somebody who can help me to get the medicines I was looking for, and then experiment with the different variations of what might be the best way to look at how I would start to kind of recognize a measured approach and seeing the results. And so I took arnica, was the first, along with looking at Aesculus, which actually comes from the horse chestnut. It's great for vasodilation and varicosing, and there's some degree of work that I wanted to do there. But what really struck me was I was probably, had started my venom research project maybe a year before that. I was fascinated by venoms. The Asian culture used them for thousands of years. I knew that I needed some degree of figuring out how do I get enzyme action to occur. This is part of the healing process, it's the most vital part. And as much as people think of venoms as poisons, they're really not. They're highly concentrated proteins, enzyme proteins, the digestive proteins. And as it turns out, there are already a number of them that were in what is called the homeopathic pharmacopoeia that I was able to identify the ones I really thought would work the best and start incorporating this into my first formula, which is like 3 of the medicines. And in the 3 medicines, I found that I could start to see measurable results.
So you were still in pain?
Still in pain.
And then taking the medicines,
Mm-hmm.
What were you feeling?
I was starting to feel my body was responding. I was starting to see a difference in the threshold of pain. The duration wasn't as long. The episodes weren't as long. I went from taking them orally to putting them on the areas where I was actually feeling the pain. And that changed everything. It immediately started to have far more and more measurable results. I was able to see that at night when the pain is usually worse, I could actually calm it down by putting the solution on my wrists and hands and on my neck to deal with the bilateral side of it. And it was unbelievable that this huge difference. The skin is an absorbing mechanism that's second only to the small intestine for absorbing things. A lot of people don't realize it's a great raincoat too, but it's astounding what it can do to absorb. And I thought about that. I'm saying, we've got to treat the skin also. Got to see if the skin is aspirating toxins and things. And I know this is all part of what's going on. And my instinct was really what drove me through the entire thing. There was nothing that I could read that was written on my end of what I was doing. There was homeopathic medicines, certainly by bigger companies, but I wasn't even aware that existed because I was really kind of blindfolding myself to only concentrating on where my instinct took me, as opposed to, it's oftentimes if you're trained classically in medical and or homeopathy, you will find that you will miss discovering things because you literally have to take a more narrow focus as much as those focuses might be appropriate. And again, here I'm the problem solver and I'm fascinated by this stuff can actually work. Then this is something I must do. And I'm loving the fact that I'm still not taking pharmaceuticals, and I'm definitely never going to take the surgery, and I'm starting to get relief.
Mm.
And things, functional things. I mean, sometimes picking up a pan would hurt. And as an Italian person, we do a lot of cooking, so it gave me hope, and it told me something else. It told me how many people are like me that will subject to the medicine right away. Medicine meaning pharmaceutical medicine, chemicals, opiates, surgeries. We find out many years later, not only does that not really benefit someone long term, especially not long term, maybe short term, but not long term. But the surgery is almost always either inconclusive or can make things worse, especially when it comes to nerve-related surgery. So these findings were fascinating for me. It just lit me on fire.
Encouraged you.
Encouraged me, major. I was changed. My role in life, thinking about what I was thinking of doing with my life.
Which was what?
Actually, before the Marine Corps, I was actually starting to study physiology on my own to become a medical doctor. Mm. My experience in Vietnam didn't change my sense of becoming a doctor or an educator, because I loved to educate even at the time. But it said to me, that little voice that speaks to you, and if you follow it, everything is good, and if you don't, you'll kick yourself into you know what. Mm-hmm. You're not going to sit through it. My specialty at the time, thinking about it, was emergency medicine, trauma surgery. You need, 8 years of school easy to just get into the kind of, skill sets and knowledge that you would need. And the little voice said, you're not going to, after all what you're doing right now, where you've been, you're not sitting through school. There's something else that's calling you that's even more important. Didn't know exactly what it was. This kind of necessity becomes the mother of invention and the guiding force in life that helps us to understand that if you're not, and maybe this is one of the key things, if people have become so oversaturated with information, it may not be bad information, but it's not their information, it may be misinformation, they will lose their instinct. When your instinct isn't sharp, when you're not relying really on it, then it will lead you down the wrong pathways. And when we can so dangerously move into becoming addicted with opiates, which I saw in Vietnam.
You saw your friends?
Yeah, and the culture. Mm. They're smoking opium on a pretty regular basis. I saw the effect it had. The elders would tell me, the young people that were vibrant and credible, and they got into smoking and their life was completely changed. And some of them obviously didn't live. So I thought, wow, this opens up a whole other thought. It's like, if we could transfer this kind of knowledge, if this knowledge is not only has been transferred, but if we can organize it, make some sense of it. We're a society that kind of wants to get rid of pain at all costs. And we don't realize that when we step over the line, it's like most people would tell you, well, you wouldn't mess with heroin, right? You wouldn't go out and mess with cocaine or crack or whatever, because those things are highly addicted. So you can't mess with them. You can't dabble in them because you're going to get addicted. I don't think anybody really ever looked to be addicted. When you look at things like OxyContin today, the same chemical compounds, it is legal heroin, basically. Most people have no idea. So here we're missing a base of knowledge that our ancestors knew, that humans knew in health and healing for thousands of years. And Lou Paradise,
He knew it.
Yeah, my instinct and my upbringing showed me that there's something to this. There's something powerful here. We may be following the wrong design. The majority of medical doctors that I know personally, the ones I knew back when I was a little boy, they were all dedicated to going to medical school to help somebody. But the model is skewed, unfortunately. And so we don't have the kind of options that give us the education that we need to say, if pain is something that we don't like, that's one set of circumstances. But what is it telling us? And can we work through it? as our ancestors did. I mean, back in the day, before there were pharmacies and medical doctors, what did the whole world do? And they used these traditional medicines, including herbal compounds, homeopathy, of course.
So seeing proof about getting yourself better, what did you do? Did you start telling your friends? Did you?
The one thing that probably happened first for me is that by the conclusion of this personalized experimentation, I was able to, and this is probably 6 months after I had started the first journey quest of what I was looking for. I was sleeping through the night like a baby. No pain, no symptoms, range of motion, function, mobility, everything became normal again. And that's a great question because everybody asks me, well, if we know that you must have been jacked up because we never not see you out here doing stuff. So how did you deal with it? And I said, I formulated something for myself to help this issue, and I had some samplets of the product available. I said, you might want to give this to mom or whoever's suffering from any kind of pain issue. Just try it, see what happens. I gave it to pharmacist friends, to doctor friends, and said to them, let me know if there's something to this. I said, I'm just happy that I got rid of my issue.
That's all you wanted
that's
to
all. That's all I wanted to do. And now I can go and tackle what's going on. Of course, what happened during the time when I accomplished this led me to understand that my role in natural medicine had to be part of what I was supposed to do, for sure. And within 2 weeks, we got interesting things happened. Elders who were coming back to their children, to people my age, every age group, young people, older people, people in between, all reporting they were getting results from this unfinished formula. And I was just like,
Where did you make it?
It was it was produced here. I made it here, and it was in a cream base, but it wasn't finished. And I put it in tiny little jars because that's all I had, and I just handed it out to them. And what they were telling me was, not only is my pain reduced, I didn't tell them anything about this. I said, just see what happens, basically. And my mother's telling me that she didn't realize until 7 days later she wasn't taking any more of her pain medicine. So I'm saying, whoa, I better think about what's going on here. I'm saying, really? Yeah, because I wasn't expecting or had an expectation of what might be happening next.
It was about you to begin with.
It was about me to begin with.
And were you pain-free?
Totally pain-free. Today, this is 35 or so more years later, no pain, no pharmaceuticals, range of motion, function, mobility, everything normal. Not a symptom, not a sign, everything gone.
Wow, a year out of service.
Yeah, just about a year out of service, was completely done. And I was just as happy as anybody could possibly be.
And you wanted to help out others.
And that's when I started to realize I really needed to go and help others, and this was my calling. Yeah.
What was the source of the pain, and did you heal it?
I knew that these micro tears in my median nerves and the ulnar nerves in my elbows were really the culprit. And the reason I knew that this process that I was using was healing, again, this homeopathic approach really just fascinated me because it was working. Because the pain was starting to really diminish. This wasn't about time, because no time, I don't think, would have helped with something that needed to be addressed. Even as a young person, time can certainly heal things, but I think I would have been on a very different pathway had I submitted to what the doctors were recommending at the time. So what it showed me was, and I had a very severe case of tears, so I didn't realize it, not enough for surgery, but probably nearly enough. So sensation, my feeling of sensation was normal. Before that, it was numbing, burning, constant throbbing, all the way from my fingers to my elbows. The subsiding duration, time, all started to come to a halt. By the time 6 months or thereabouts came to pass, there was no sign of it, really. By the end of that first year, there was absolutely no sign of it. I mean, if I got a twinge once in a while, I just put more medicine on. But at the end of the day, I knew that it was my body that healed, the body being that miracle. The body healed this, and that all I was doing, facilitating helping the body to find the balances it was looking for, which is a natural, normal part of the physiology, to get to the point of optimum healing and repair. And that pretty much is where it set the first tone for that first step on that new road, that journey. And it really just humbled me, quite honestly, because I knew I had discovered something, or something discovered me, which I like even better. And I was just passing it along to other people and being a facilitator. And I guess the biggest driving force for me, I knew what it was like. As a young person, knew what it was like to have my life really turned kind of upside down for even a period of time. And what it must be like for so many millions of people who I knew for sure were suffering out there. And that they shouldn't have to, because they didn't know there were other things they could do to help themselves. And that this all came from something very basic. And I thought my great-grandmothers and my grandmother, both my grandmothers actually, would be very proud that their little Italian pain in the neck decided to take some of the stuff and not make fun of them as usual back in the day when, it's a bunch of wives' tales. Took that thing and made it into something, and started a life process that was just amazing and rewarding.
And you have a passion now for helping war veterans?
The veteran part of it is a big thing for us, for me, for many years. Of course, I know what it feels like to have people who are extracted out of the field, banged up, nearly dead, and administering to them and hoping that you can save their life, and or all the forces that are possible, including, for me, a very deep spiritual belief in God, that we're here for a reason. And the veterans piece, especially when it comes to the later projects in addiction and addiction prevention, become immensely humbling that we can actually facilitate these kinds of things through what we know and how we can pass that along. I think what people really need to understand is healing is really the ultimate form of relieving pain. And if people are still in pain, then there's something wrong that they're not getting to or having available to them to help them understand how they can get the relief they're looking for.
So Lou, coming back from war,
Mm-hmm.
how hard was it to live with pain?
It was very difficult. There's a lot of things, of course, you're decompressing from when you come back from the combat field, and from the field of the difficulties there are immense all the way around. So having to have pain kind of distracted me a little bit from that, but it was more miserable, I think, because it left me not being able to physically do a lot of the things that normally, go out and run, go out and do the stuff, pull-ups, everything that I love doing outside, fishing, hiking, everything. So it was miserable, really, for me.
Your day was like what? Were you in bed?
No, I couldn't sleep in bed. My hands would be worse if I laid down, which was all kind of crazy. So I spent time, I try to, I did a lot of walking around the house or in and out as I possibly could, but I couldn't get to anything. Every time I touched anything with my hands, I would get these jolting shocks and whatever. So I decided, I'm just going to hang out, chill. Maybe I need to slow down. Maybe I need to rest more. Wasn't used to that, never, not even today. So
on a scale from 1 to 10, what was your pain?
12.
12.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it wasn't like muscle pain. We're used to getting banged up, muscle, contusion, sprains and stuff, no big deal. This was very, very different. So it wasn't a muscular pain. It was that neuropathic, this neuropathy kind of pain. Burning, throbbing, nothing seemed to satisfy it, initially at least. And how people live through, these kinds of things. A person with diabetic neuropathy or chemo-induced neuropathy, person with sciatic for that matter. It really, really adversely affects life, and it's not like muscle pain, so it's miserable.
Could you work?
No, because the kind of work I was doing really, required the two hands, and
Yes.
And no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't get a position. I attempted to do it, but couldn't get a position to do anything functionally. Really, it was that crazy.
How did your pain affect your family, your friends?
Well, I'm one of those people that if I get sick, I'd rather be alone. I'd rather administer to myself because I know exactly what I need to do for what's ailing me. So I kind of locked everybody out. I said, guys, I've got some issues. I'm not going to be real fun, so I'll call you. Don't when I can, and I'll let you know I'm okay, of course, because they were kind of worried that maybe this guy's they know me well enough to know I wasn't going off the deep end at all. But I said I'm just dealing with some issues. I need to have time alone.
So the pain was isolating.
Yes, and I think that's the key thing for me that is always troubling, how isolated people are that are in pain, especially chronic conditions. They feel very much alone. They feel hopeless. The family can't help. The family feels helpless. It may affect their relationships with everyone. It could affect their ability to work. I mean, just like I wouldn't have believed that I couldn't go out and work. And that changes the game major. It makes people, when people are desperate and feel hopeless, that is a very dire place to be.
Did you feel hopeless?
Not exactly. I guess I was just angry about the fact that it was holding me back. But I may be, I'm sure I'm not the only person who thinks the way I do and feels the way I do, but I was more angry about it than feeling hopeless. I said, no, there's a way I can fix this, and I just want it yesterday,
Was there help for you?
No, not really. When I got out of the military, the military offers really no help for this kind of an issue. Even as our modern time in 2013, there's some phenomenally good people in the VA medical system. It's just not the way they administer the VA medical system. So the majority of veterans don't get any real help. They get a script, and Vicodin, OxyContin, Lorcet, Percocet, or a combination of the whole damn thing. So it's not. It's very unpleasant to know that we have a system that doesn't work for our people.
And do they talk about addiction?
All the time. They talk about it, but they don't do anything about it. I think they're just realizing now that it's ruining perfectly good people to re-engaging, especially veterans who just want to continue to serve their country. There's no real interim place where anybody can go for this.
If you could tell people in pain one thing, what would it be?
I think the most important thing is know more about what your pain is. Know that there's plenty of information that can help you to start unraveling why this problem, although it's been major for you and has disrupted your life, does not own you. You were not born to be in pain. You were not born to be a prisoner of the pain or the ugly side effects of oral pain medication. You're born to have a celebratory life, to kick up your heels, go out and boogie and enjoy yourself.
Yes. And
engage in life. And so know that first. That'll be the light for you. The tunnel isn't that dark. A lot of folks can be helped just by digging more into the information about what's really going on and what's available to them. And realize that as much as your doctor cares about you, they don't know everything. Doctors are going to medical school for 4 months of pharmaceutical training and maybe 4 hours of nutritional training. So where are they going to lean? Know that you're part of your own solution. You need to do this. You can do this. And anybody who digs in and finds the information will find their way out of where they are and restore their hope and quality of life.